Imagine watching your boss just abandon your entire team in a busy parking lot so he can go eat a massive omelet completely by himself.
Oh, man.
Right. And instead of firing him, or, quitting on the spot, you actively help him record a hit album the very next day.
It sounds completely impossible.
It really does. But that level of contradiction, the maddening, completely rule-breaking psychology of the highly eccentric frontman, that is at the absolute heart of today's deep dive.
It's such a fascinating topic because it forces us to examine a very specific social dynamic. We're looking at people who just completely upend every plan.
Yeah, every single one.
Exactly. They ignore every basic social convention. They leave a trail of just utter bewilderment in their wake. And yet, and this is the crazy part, they remain the absolute gravitational center of their groups.
Like, you want to wring their neck, but you simply cannot look away.
Right, you're just captivated by them.
Which is exactly why we are pulling from Kenny Denton's incredibly vivid memoir today. It's called There Ain't No Rules in Rock and Roll.
Such a great book.
It really is. Denton gives us these totally unfiltered excerpts detailing the eccentric world of Doug Sahm. Now, for those who don't know, Doug was the wildly unpredictable frontman of the Sir Douglas Quintet.
A true force of nature.
Oh, absolutely. And the goal here is to explore the bizarre, often hilarious realities of touring with a true rock and roll maverick. Because it's one thing to, drop the needle on a classic record.
Right.
But it is an entirely different psychological experiment to try and share a tour van with the guy who actually made it.
Oh, I can only imagine. The smell alone, probably.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with a story that perfectly establishes Doug's rather unique worldview. I like to call it the Great Mill Valley Omelet Incident.
Which is really the perfect entry point. Because before we even analyze the high-stakes environments of stages and recording studios, we have to look at the baseline.
The everyday stuff.
Exactly. How does a designated leader function in mundane, everyday situations when they just constantly bypass social norms for their own immediate personal comfort?
Right. So picture the setup. The band is in the middle of recording the Midnight Sun album. And one morning, Doug proposes they all hit up this specific restaurant in Mill Valley for breakfast.
Okay.
He's just hyping it up, completely lured by their reputation for serving these, world-class omelets. But there are 8 of them in the group.
So that's a logistical nightmare already.
Right. They have to coordinate, split into 2 cars, and actually make the drive.
And logistics and coordination are generally the natural enemies of profound eccentricity.
Yeah, they really are. And of course, the restaurant is absolutely packed when they arrive.
Classic.
It's bustling, so they have to wait a considerable amount of time, but they eventually secure a table. And to be fair to Doug's culinary instincts, the food was spectacular.
So it was actually worth the hassle.
It was entirely worth the wait. So a few days later, the group decides to run it back. They return to the exact same spot, again, in 2 separate cars.
But the dynamic shifts the moment the tires hit the parking lot.
Instantly. Doug promptly hawks out of his car and announces he is going to, quote, check for available tables.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And he just leaves the rest of the band waiting in the 2 vehicles.
Just sitting.
Just sitting there. And they wait. 5 minutes go by, which, feels like an absolute eternity when you're sitting in a parked car hungry.
Oh, the worst.
No sign of Doug. Finally, Kenny Denton just goes inside to investigate the delay. He walks into the restaurant and finds Doug, get this, completely bypassing the group.
No way.
Yes. He is comfortably seated at a table, happily indulging in a massive omelet, entirely by himself.
He just started eating.
He simply didn't want to wait in line that day. When the rest of the band eventually walked in and saw him just wiping his mouth, Denton notes there was not a lot of love in the room.
I would be furious. It creates this fascinating sociological freeze frame, though.
It does, because I just genuinely don't understand it. If a friend pulls that kind of move, like abandoning me in a parking lot to get his eggs faster, our friendship is essentially over.
Oh, immediately over.
So, is this calculated malice? Is it a power play? Or is this just a guy whose brain is wired to completely bypass the basic social contract for immediate gratification?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it actually comes down to a psychological concept called idiosyncrasy credits.
Idiosyncrasy credits?
Yeah. In highly specialized groups, so think like a rock band, a surgical team, or even a tech startup, the leader or the primary creative force accumulates these invisible credits. They get them through their talent or the success they generate for the group, and then they can spend those credits to deviate from standard social norms without getting kicked out. So the omelet incident isn't just about breakfast. It acts as this unconscious stress test of the group's hierarchy.
Wait, so you're saying every hit song he writes basically deposits a credit in his account, and he cashes those credits in by eating alone while his bandmates starve in a Toyota?
I mean, in a sense, yes. It perfectly shows the bubble that rock frontmen construct. The usual rules of reciprocity that hold groups of adults together, waiting your turn, eating communally, they're just completely suspended.
Wow.
Doug is establishing exactly what the band is willing to endure. He's stretching the boundaries of their tolerance.
And if you will tolerate a guy abandoning you in a parking lot over breakfast, what else will you put up with, right? Because that casual self-centeredness doesn't just switch off when breakfast is over. It bleeds directly into their professional lives. We move from the restaurant booth straight into the recording studio.
Which fundamentally changes the stakes.
Oh, totally.
Because we're transitioning from personal eccentricity, where the cost is just like annoyance, to professional eccentricity, where the cost could literally be their actual career.
Exactly. The transition we see on the very first day of recording their second album, Rio Medina. Doug turns to his bandmate, Augie, and drops this completely unironic, entirely backhanded idea.
Oh, this is brutal.
It really is. He says, Augie, let's record the hits tomorrow. How about we do some of your songs today?
I mean, that is a breathtaking demotion of his bandmate's art.
Right.
He basically relegates his colleagues' creative output to the level of a vocal warm-up exercise.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because of the sheer audacity of the delivery. Let's use an analogy here. It's like operating a nuclear reactor.
Okay, I like this.
Doug is the radioactive core. He runs incredibly hot. He generates all the necessary power in the hits, but he is fundamentally unstable.
Yes.
The rest of the band basically has to act as the cooling rods. They have to absorb all this toxic radiation, the insults, the ego, the chaos, just so the whole structure doesn't melt down.
That is an incredibly apt way to look at it. Because if we connect this to the bigger picture, Kenny Denton is sitting in the studio watching this unfold. He just roars with laughter and asks Augie the question we are all screaming.
Yeah, how do you put up with things like that?
Exactly. And Augie's response is the ultimate cooling rod technique. He just sighs and says, "That's just Doug, man."
That's just Doug, man. I mean, it sounds so defeated.
It doesn't defeat it, but it actually functions as a highly sophisticated coping mechanism.
Really?
Yeah, we are unpacking the profound psychological resilience required to be a supporting musician to an eccentric genius. Think about it if Augie takes that insult personally.
If he internalizes it.
Exactly. If he internalizes that Doug truly believes his song's a worthless filler, the ego clash destroys the band. The recording session halts, the album doesn't get made, and nobody gets paid.
So he categorizes Doug's behavior as a force of nature. Like, you can't be angry at a hurricane for raining on you.
Right.
A hurricane is just doing what a hurricane does. Doug is just doing what Doug does.
He depersonalizes the insult to keep the ecosystem intact. The frontman is allowed his delusions of total grandeur, while the supporting cast silently holds the actual architectural structure of the band together. They manage the ego so the music can exist.
But the inherent flaw in that system is that depersonalizing the insults works as a coping mechanism inside the isolated bubble of a recording studio.
Because they control the environment.
Right. The band knows the rules. They know the safe words, so to speak. But that ecosystem completely shatters when you introduce a highly rigid external variable, because Doug actively weaponized this unpredictability against the outside world.
Ah, you're talking about the collision between his internal chaos and the external structure of the media.
The Swedish television incident.
Oh, this one is amazing.
It is incredibly cinematic. So the band is scheduled for a live rehearsal on a major Swedish TV broadcast. Now, television is a medium of extreme precision.
Everything is timed to the millisecond.
Exactly. Marks have to be hit. But true to form, Doug arrives completely late to the rehearsal.
Which already acts as a huge disruption to a highly controlled environment.
Yeah.
In broadcast television, a late arrival doesn't just mean waiting around. It means lighting cues are delayed, sound checks are rushed, union breaks are threatened. The tension in that room is already incredibly high.
And the Swedish TV director, who is desperately trying to keep this massive production on the tracks, starts organizing the camera shots. He explains the blocking to Doug very clearly. He says, look, after your introduction, you need to enter the stage from the left.
Which is a completely standard Simple stage direction
Right.
dictated by where the cameras are positioned.
Completely standard. But Doug instantly pushes back. He looks at the director and says, "No, that won't suit me. I'd rather come out from the right."
Based on absolutely no technical or artistic reasoning whatsoever.
None at all. And they get into this massive back and forth about it. Finally, the director, who realizes he is dealing with a volatile element and just wants to get the rehearsal finished, he caves.
He just gives up.
He spends a significant amount of time readjusting all the heavy camera pedestals, completely changing the lighting grid, and altering the audio marks, all to accommodate Doug entering from the right side of the stage. And after all that massive effort, the rehearsal finally goes smoothly.
So the director believes he has successfully managed the talent. He thinks they have a solid agreement.
Oh, but the trap is meticulously set.
I love this part.
That night, the live broadcast goes on air. The television host does the big, sweeping introduction for Doug Sahm. All the cameras swing over and focus tightly on the right side of the stage, exactly where they agreed he would be.
Right.
And Doug, of course, enters from the left.
Leaving the cameras broadcasting an empty space to the entire nation on live television.
It is pure sabotage. So I have to ask you, looking at this from a psychological perspective, why go through the immense trouble? Was this a calculated power play to establish dominance over the TV director? Or is this just the impulsive whim of a trickster who couldn't resist a moment of pure chaos?
Well, this raises an important question about the archetype of the trickster in rock and roll history.
Yeah.
Think about the tension happening in that specific room. You have the highly controlled, rigid, almost sterile environment of television production, facing off against the inherent messy rebellion of rock music. For someone like Doug, agreeing to the rules of the TV director feels like a compromise of his very identity.
So following a simple direction makes him feel like an employee rather than an artist.
Precisely. He's not a hired actor hitting a mark. He's a rock star. By forcing the director to physically change the entire studio layout to the right and then entering from the left anyway, he completely dismantles the director's authority.
Wow.
He proves, on live television, that the sterile environment of the media cannot contain him or predict him. It's essentially performative disobedience.
He wanted them to know that he was in control by proving that they had absolutely no control over him.
Exactly.
It's actually brilliant in a deeply frustrating way. But you can only push the envelope and the people around you so far before the universe pushes back.
The idiosyncrasy credits eventually run out.
They absolutely do. Because after tolerating the stolen omelets, absorbing the backhanded studio insults, and surviving the live TV antics, the deeply fatigued bandmates finally reach their absolute breaking point.
It was bound to happen.
And the story of that breaking point involves trains, cards, and a desperate call for a helicopter.
This is where we see the transition from emotional enabling to just pure physical exhaustion.
The setting is a grueling tour through Scandinavia, and the golden rule of this specific tour is simple travel light.
Sensible.
Very sensible. The band members are actively washing their clothes in hotel sinks on the road to avoid hauling heavy bags and paying exorbitant laundry expenses. But Doug, operating in complete contrast to everyone else, insists on bringing 6 or 7 massive suitcases with him.
Of course he does.
He outright refuses to deal with laundry.
Which means, practically speaking, those heavy bags have to be physically moved by someone.
And that someone is the band. They essentially become his unpaid, highly skilled porters. They are hauling his mountain of luggage from hotels to vans to train stations.
We talked earlier about the band acting as cooling rods for his emotional radiation. Now we see them absorbing the literal physical cost of his eccentricity.
Yeah.
But physical labor drains the bank of goodwill much faster than an insult.
The absolute limit of that goodwill is reached in Trondheim, Norway. Everyone from the band except Doug naturally arrives early at the train station. They get on the train, they settle into their compartment, and they start playing a quiet game of cards.
Nice.
It is just a rare moment of peace on a very difficult tour.
And then the chaos agent arrives.
Doug shows up late, as always, and he demands their help loading his massive pile of luggage onto the train. Reluctantly, because, that's just Doug. They put down their cards, they walk out onto the platform, and they load all 6 or 7 of his heavy bags into their specific compartment.
So they comply. The ecosystem is still technically functioning at this point.
It is, right up until Doug suddenly changes his mind. Out of nowhere, he looks around the carriage and says, "No, I think I want to be in the carriage behind."
You gotta be kidding.
Augie tries to inject some reason into the situation. He says, "But Doug, we're all in this one. Let's just stay here." But Doug is completely insistent. He forces his bandmates to physically move all of his heavy luggage again out of their carriage, down the steps, along the platform, and into the rear carriage.
The sheer physical exertion of moving 7 heavy suitcases twice just to satisfy a completely arbitrary whim.
It's exhausting just picturing it. But the band complies. They haul the bags to the back carriage, they secure them, and then they finally trudge back to their original compartment, sit down, and return to their card game.
Okay.
The train whistle blows. They are just about to leave. And this is where the climax of years of enabling finally happens. Doug's face suddenly appears at their compartment window, looking in from the platform outside.
Oh, no.
He is frantic. He's waving his arms and shouting through the glass to Augie and the guys. They've unhooked the back part of the train. Quick, I need you all to help get my bags.
Wait, the rear carriage, the one he stubbornly insisted on being in against all advice, is a stationary car.
Yes, it is not going to the next town. Oh, that is unbelievable.
Exactly. So what does this all mean? What does the band do after years of stolen omelets, studio insults, and hauling luggage? The band, they did nothing.
That is the most profound reaction possible. They didn't scream, they didn't scramble to help, they just stopped.
They remained completely seated. They continued playing their card game as the train slowly pulled out of the station. They literally just watched Doug's face slowly disappear from the window as he was left standing entirely alone on the train platform in Norway.
Wow.
I just vividly picture the immense quiet satisfaction in that train compartment. They are sitting comfortably looking at their cards while the architect of their daily chaos literally fades into the distance. It is the most perfect poetic justice I have ever heard.
It truly is a masterclass in the boundaries of enabling. Because for years, they tolerated the emotional slights. They laughed off the arrogance.
But the physical absurdity of moving 6 heavy suitcases to a different train car for absolutely no logical reason that broke the system. They didn't even have to argue with him. They just let the natural consequences of his actions finally, inevitably, catch up to him.
And those natural consequences were incredibly steep.
Yeah.
Because the train left him behind, and with no other commercial travel options available in that remote area, Doug actually had to arrange and pay out of pocket for a private helicopter to transport him and his mountain of suitcases to the next gig.
That is incredible. The private helicopter really stands as the ultimate hilarious symbol of the true financial and logistical cost of his eccentricity.
It really does.
He tried to avoid a few dollars in hotel laundry expenses, and it ended up costing him a private aviation charter across Scandinavia. The universe perfectly balanced the scales.
It's the highest possible tax you could pay for being annoying. And it brings us to a quick look back at the incredible journey we've taken today through Kenny Denton's memories. We started with the psychology of stolen omelets in Mill Valley. We moved to the depersonalization of backhanded compliments in the recording studio. We analyzed the trickster archetype during a live TV sabotage in Sweden, and we ended with the breaking point of a desperate helicopter rescue in Norway.
It's a breathtaking resume of sustained chaos.
But despite all of this, despite the heavy bags, the blatant insults, and the sheer unending exhaustion of managing this man's life, Kenny Denton ends this section of his memoir with a sentiment that really caught me off guard.
Oh, what does he say?
After everything we just discussed, he writes, quote, "Who would have guessed that I would end up developing a deep affection for this eccentric Texan? I miss him to this day."
That captures the ultimate paradox of dealing with a personality like Doug Sahm perfectly.
Hasn't it?
Yeah. The daily chaos is absolutely infuriating, but when that person is gone, the absence of their energy is profoundly felt. They force everyone around them to live in high definition.
They leave a vacuum that normal people just can't fill, which leaves you, the listener, with something really interesting to chew on. Think about the Dougs in your own life.
Oh, we all have one.
We absolutely do. The chaotic friends, the eccentric coworkers who stretch your idiosyncrasy credits to the absolute limit. Is it possible that the people who cause us the most immense hair-pulling frustration are the exact same ones who leave the most unfillable voids when they're gone?
It's a great question.
And it makes you wonder, does true creative genius actually require a little bit of unapologetic, maddening chaos? Think about it.